what but you have to say, and this is what, and maybe because I'm geeky like this, I've always loved politics, as you know. There's nothing to me more exciting than a political campaign. I
Right.
mean, the people that come around, disparate interests and all of that, all galvanize around this particular person they believe in. This political, this particular person, they are dedicated to doing as much as I can, as much as they can, each of us can, to make sure that person is elected. In other words, hired.
One, two, three. Pick up your feet. Pick them up.
Definitely something I wanted to touch on is voting. I think that is, I mean, people have been raising a lot more awareness about it now and trying to get people to participate and get involved. But I was having a discussion with mom earlier when I was explaining to her when I was working on a campaign with you, and I was going out handing out literature and introducing myself to people like, hi, I'm Todd, I'm Joyce's grandson, this is my grandmother, she's running for city council or New York State Assembly or Congress, and and then the reaction I would get from people was typically either my vote doesn't count, I'm not voting because politicians are corrupt, which I understand where that idea would come from. And then the third would be, and this was my favorite because I used to wait for this response. Well, what is she gonna do for me?
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
that one used to like rip me in half. You want to place somebody in power who can benefit your community, who can do good for your community. Of course, everybody wants that, but the idea of then voting for that individual and then to just sit back and just be like, okay, now go do what we voted for. Like,
Yeah,
no,
yeah, right.
it's
Like,
not we elect you and then we let them do all the work. Like, this is, we as a community, we as everybody, we have to participate and continue to participate. People also think that you just vote and you just kind of just leave it at that. And it's
and
like,
it's not. And because if it's not, and we've had this discussion, and your lament is the same as mine. And I'll give you one much better. I've got broad shoulders, but I don't have the shoulders to carry the weight of the world. In other words, I live in the community like you do. And you remember I used to say, I'm here, I'm asking you to hire me to represent you, not to do everything for you, represent us on issues of concern to larger community.
exactly.
And you have a role in this to play as well. As I am a public servant, you must be also a public servant, a guardian of community. You must want, the garbage cleaned as well as I. You're not going to come to me and say, Miss Johnson, we elected you to make sure that the garbage, the garbage is picked up regularly. And I'll come back to you to say, I'm a legislator, and I will do that. But how about you call the Department of Sanitation to say, on my street, on my block, you are not picking up the garbage as regularly as you're picking up on street X. That is your role to do.
Right.
If a district is Congress, 500,000 people, am I going to be the protector of the lives of 500,000? We all have a role to play. And I think that that's been lost. And, the easy way is to say, what are you going to do for me? And I came back, what are we going to do together?
That's how you answer that question. That's how.
And fast forward to where we are now. We're talking about police. And, here in New York, there's around the corner where we live, the 24th Precinct Council. Each precinct then had a community council where you could grieve. So you just go away like, oh, they're all dirty cops or this, that, and another. Have you reported that one of, let's say the odd one out, the real bum? Have you reported that person? Have you made yourself known to the police community by councils? Have you invited them to your tenants association so that they see? Have you reminded them that you vote?
Right.
Because the police, a police precinct reports to a police chief, who then reports to a mayor who we've hired
Exactly.
to put the right people in place. So it is, we have never learned, and no, it's not learned. We know this, but the easy way out is saying, Ms. Johnson, what you gonna do for me? Well, those days are over. We
Right.
have got, one person can't do it. And I am as much of a citizen as you are with responsibilities. I happen to have, you hired me to do a job, mostly representation, legislation, just like you are hired to do a job. But we all have stake in the greater community.
Exactly. Point well made. Earlier today, I went to double check to make sure that I was still registered to vote, because, with all the, I've heard so many crazy stories about, people, if you haven't, in certain states, people say if you haven't voted in X amount of elections, then you automatically are no longer registered to vote, and you have to re-register to vote without there being any type of warning, any type of notification that you are no longer registered to vote, which is pretty crazy. So I guess I want to take the time to kind of say, if somebody who was viewing this had no idea on the steps to getting registered to vote, as far as absentee ballots, X, Y, and Z, like, what are some brief steps that somebody could take? Like, say,
and here goes the internet. Anything we want to know instantly, we Google it. We are individual entrepreneurs and safeguards of our own future. So you didn't learn it in school, and internet, you can look up who is my council member, who are elected officials, call their offices. But more than that, the easiest thing in the world, you go online, or I started to say the phone book, but not anymore phone books. Board of Election, call the Board of Election. When's the next election? Can you send me a whatever? They used to have registration cards in banks and post offices and all. There's not that availability anymore. Local nonprofits, you come in for some social service or whatever, there was always, voter registration cards. I've been a big promoter of that. We have lost that. And when I was doing voter protection, I would say to a lot of the nonprofits, all you have to do, there was a time when the system wanted everyone to vote. I'm not so sure about that. It is less so now. The power of the vote is the most powerful tool. And why we know that? Because since 2012, there has been a significant move to suppress the vote. That significant move has been targeted precipitously or directly to people of color. Why? The people of color, Hispanics, Blacks, are becoming a majority. We are no longer, quote, minority. Lump them together, and in some administrations, some parties, they'd rather us not vote. And so you heard of last year the purging of 300,000 voters supposedly who hadn't voted in Georgia, or that they were registered and their signature didn't match up. Like you know how you sign your signature. Depending on where you are, it could be it, or it could be in whatever. Exactly. And so if it wasn't a direct match from what you might sign on a check versus how you signed on your voter registration card, they would purge you directly to take away the most fundamental. And I'm saying, when folks say my vote doesn't matter, if your vote doesn't matter, why are some paying a heck of a lot of attention to making sure that you cannot vote?
Exactly.
When you go to a precinct and you're standing in line for 8 hours, when you go, when you learn that you would not learn, when you go and when you voted every time in the last 30 years and you go this election and you are no longer on the rolls. So the responsibility to check rests with me. But here's what I've done. I've never missed a vote in my life. So you're not going to have me purged when you know, you can look up my record. There has never been an election that I have not participated in.
Right.
But all of this is up to you. You're no longer taught. So we were taught this in school. You know, I couldn't wait to 16. I think you've heard me say this. I say it all the time. You know, drive a car, get with a student driver's license. You get, then after dark you couldn't drive, but it doesn't matter. I was driving, and at 18 to vote. It was my right. That's the one thing I was taught. It just seemed like I was responsible, and I can decide on who I'm going to hire to do the work. Pick the best people to do the work in the public's interest.
I think this was before, I think this was right before I turned 18, and you were like, make sure as soon as you turn 18, you register to vote. And I remember you explaining why it was important, especially me as a Black male, just Black in general, the right to vote, because I remember you saying, do you know how many people
died
and shed blood for you to be able to have this right to vote, and for you not to participate is literally like a slap in every single one of their faces.
We have the right to put people in or take them out. And just consider in some administrations, you look at who's in Congress and who's in the Senate, and some of the plans they have or don't have, some of the disparities that everybody talks about in education, jobs, I mean, every economic survival, everything you can think, housing and all of that. And what does it, who controls that? Someone else. And when we stay home, those who don't have our interests can do their merry will. Their merry will. Politics is, it's not even, politics is simply a numbers game. Who is hired with one vote more than the other? So you stay home and the police captain, the mayor, the governor, the congressperson, the dog catcher, the sanitation head, and all of this gets in because you sat back. And then when there are no services, you know, they laugh at you and say, they ain't gonna vote. Why should I worry? You can hire them and you can fire them, but you don't vote, you've done neither. I'm hoping we're woke now. I'm hoping woke. You hear that, you know, we're woke. That means, I'm on it now. I got you. I got your number and I'm woke. You tap me on the shoulder, my eyes are wide. I'm woke.
Hey. Say
and, and I just hope that, as you know, sometimes you have to go, you know, the pendulum swings from one side to the other. This pendulum has swung to a side that we are scared about. And the only way it swings back through our force, our participation and our vote. And that's all we have. And also, there's nothing wrong that, you know, talking about hires over jobs. These jobs, everybody, you know, elected. I said they're jobs. Remember my life. And when I would say, Todd, you remember, I'm asking you to hire me. People would look like, it's a job. I'm applying a job. You are the employer. This is a job. With your vote, one by one, I'm asking you to hire me. We've got to start looking at people who, quote, serve us or who are elected to serve us in that way.
That was tight.
The future is your generation, the generation behind, the generation in front. What you see, what you want to see in this country will be up to you or somebody else by your absence from the process. Anyway, it's always a pleasure.
It is a pleasure. I'm so glad.
You see my, if anybody doesn't know, that's who I am.
Joyce Johnson, City Council. I was on that. Oh my God.
This is Double Dutch TV, and we just let it rock and roll